First contact with human ingenuity. Chief Science Officer Tulara of the galactic research vessel, Eternal Curiosity, stared at her sensor readings in disbelief. Her crystalline antennae flickered with confusion as she recalibrated the instruments for the fourth time. "High Commander," she called out, her voice carrying a hint of frustration. "I believe our sensors are malfunctioning. The energy readings from the human space station, Prometheus Point, are impossible." High Commander Vexthor glided across the bridge, his iridescent scales shifting colors with each movement. "Impossible how, Chief Science Officer?" "According to these readings, they're operating a matter synthesizer at 300% efficiency. That violates at least 12 fundamental laws of thermodynamics." Tulara's fingers danced across the holographic interface, and that's not even the strangest part. They seem to be powering half their station with something our translator identifies as potato batteries. The bridge fell silent. The Arxians prided themselves on being the most technologically advanced species in the known galaxy. Their civilization had spent millennia perfecting the art of energy efficiency. Yet here was a relatively young species, barely 2 centuries into space travel, apparently breaking the laws of physics with root vegetables. "Open a communication channel," Vexthor ordered. "It's time we understood what exactly these humans are doing." The response came almost immediately, projected through their quantum crystal display. A human appeared, wearing what appeared to be a grease-stained uniform with various patches and burns. She was holding something that emitted steam and had dark circles under her eyes. "Prometheus Point, Chief Engineer Sarah Chen speaking. How can I help you folks?" She took a long drink from her steaming container. "Greetings, Chief Engineer Chen. This is High Commander Vexthor of the Arxian Science Fleet. We've detected some unusual energy signatures from your station. Our sensors must be malfunctioning." Sarah grinned, a gesture that still made many Arxians uncomfortable with its display of teeth. "Oh, those readings are probably accurate. We've been experimenting with some improvements to the standard matter synthesizer design. Had to get creative after that micro-meteor strike last month took out half our power grid." Hilara interjected, her scientific curiosity overwhelming protocol. "But how are you achieving such efficiency rates? It's theoretically impossible." "Well," Sarah scratched her head, "we basically reversed the polarity of the neutron flow, rerouted it through a series of modified potato batteries. They're great conductors when you add the right enzymes, and then used the excess heat to power our coffee makers. The coffee makers then feed into our secondary systems, which..." She continued explaining for several minutes, using terms that made the Arxian scientists, universal translators, struggle and sputter. Vexthor noticed that 3 of his junior scientists had already begun drafting their resignations. One was quietly weeping in the corner, mumbling about how their entire understanding of physics had been wrong. "Would you be willing to demonstrate these modifications?" he asked, trying to maintain his composure. "Sure, though fair warning, it might look a bit messy. We had to use some duct tape and paper clips in the last upgrade. Oh, and you might want to bring protective eyewear. Sometimes it sparks when we're pushing it past 250% efficiency. Don't worry though, that's normal, mostly." As the Eternal Curiosity docked with Prometheus Point, Vexthor made a personal log entry. "First contact with human engineers has forced us to question everything we thought we knew about the universe. They seem to operate on a completely different understanding of physical laws, or perhaps no understanding at all. Most disturbing is their frequent use of the phrase, 'hold my coffee,' before attempting something our scientists claim is impossible." The airlock cycled, and as it opened, the Arxian delegation was hit with the smell of something burning, the sound of metal groaning in ways it shouldn't, and the sight of humans rushing about with tools that appeared to be held together by sheer optimism. "Welcome to Prometheus Point." Sarah greeted them cheerfully, now wearing what appeared to be wielding goggles on her head and carrying an even larger steaming container. "Don't mind the noise. That's just the quantum manifold having a bit of a tantrum. We find that playing classical music helps calm it down." Shall we begin the tour? Vexthor realized this was going to be either the most enlightening or most terrifying day of his scientific career. Possibly both. The crisis begins. The tour of Prometheus Point had barely begun when the station's emergency sirens began wailing. Red lights flashed as an automated voice announced with surprising cheerfulness, "Warning, quantum cascade failure detected in sectors 3 through 7. Also, someone left their lunch in the particle accelerator again. Please remove it before it achieves sentience." Sarah Chen's expression shifted from tour guide to commander in an instant. "Well, looks like you'll get to see some real human engineering in action. Hope you brought those protective goggles I mentioned." Thalera's sensors were going haywire. "The quantum field is destabilizing. According to our calculations, you have approximately 47 minutes before total system collapse." "Nah," Sarah said, gulping down the last of her coffee. "More like 12 minutes. Your calculations probably didn't account for the modifications we made last Tuesday involving rubber bands and that microwave we converted into a quantum harmonizer." Vexthor watched in horror as humans began emerging from various access panels and maintenance tubes, many looking like they'd just woken up from napping in decidedly unsafe locations. They carried tools that ranged from sophisticated diagnostic equipment to what appeared to be kitchen utensils modified with blinking lights. "Jenkins," Sarah shouted, "get the emergency pasta strainer from Engineering Bay 4. "The what?" Lara asked, her antennae twitching violently. "Trust me, you don't want to know what we use that for," Sarah replied with a wink. "Rodriguez, how's the quantum core looking?" A voice echoed from somewhere above them. "Remember that thing we weren't supposed to do because it might tear a hole in space-time? We might need to do that thing." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, that tracks. Okay, people, initiate protocol impossible." The Arxian delegation watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as the humans sprang into action. Their methodology defied every known principle of crisis management. One engineer was literally kicking a terminal while chanting "work, work, work." Another had rigged what appeared to be a child's toy to monitor quantum fluctuations. "This is madness," Lara whispered to Vexthor. Their actions violate at least 27 safety protocols and several laws of physics. "Look," Sarah said as she crawled into a maintenance shaft with a toolbox that was making concerning beeping noises. "Sometimes you have to tell physics to take a coffee break. Speaking of which, someone get started on brewing a fresh pot. We're going to need it." The quantum cascade was spreading. Through the station's windows, they could see reality itself beginning to ripple. Several Arxian scientists were recording everything, though their devices kept shutting down, apparently offended by the humans' methods. "High Commander," one of the junior scientists reported, "the humans are attempting to stabilize the quantum field by." "I'm sorry, this can't be right. They appear to be using a modified toaster connected to something they call a quantum flux capacitor, which seems to be made primarily of paperclips and hope." Sarah emerged from the shaft, her uniform now covered in an iridescent substance that shouldn't exist in their dimension. "Good news and bad news," she announced. "Good news, we've isolated the quantum cascade. Bad news, it's spreading into your ship's systems. Turns out your quantum crystal computers are a bit too compatible with our jury-rigged solutions." The lights on the Eternal Curiosity began to flicker. Vexthor felt his scales pale to a ghostly white as he realized both vessels were now entangled in whatever impossible scenario the humans had created. "Don't worry," Sarah said, pulling out what appeared to be a spatula with circuit boards attached to it. "We just need to synchronize our systems, reverse the polarity of both quantum fields, and maybe break a few more laws of physics. Nothing we haven't done before. Well, except for the part with your ship. That's new. But hey, first time for everything." She turned to her crew. "All right, people, this is what we trained for. Well, not exactly this, but you know what I mean. Jenkins, get me the quantum encrypted duct tape. Rodriguez, warm up the relativistic pasta strainer. And somebody please get that sandwich out of the particle accelerator before it evolves enough to file for citizenship. The Arxians watched as chaos unfolded around them, slowly realizing that perhaps there was a method to this madness. Whether it would save them or doom them all remained to be seen. Impossible solutions. All right, Sarah announced, standing before a hastily assembled joint human-Arxian emergency response team. Here's what we're dealing with. The quantum cascade has created a feedback loop between our station and your ship. Every time your systems try to normalize according to standard physics, our modifications cause them to, let's say, get creative. The holographic display showed a mess of energy patterns that made several Arxian scientists cover their eyes. Tilara struggled to make sense of it. But these energy signatures, they're moving in patterns that shouldn't be possible. Yeah, we get that a lot. Rodriguez called from inside a maintenance tube. You should have seen what happened when we introduced our coffee maker to the quantum harmonizer. Did you know that under the right circumstances, caffeine can bend spacetime? Vexthor watched as humans scurried about, connecting their crude modifications to the Arxians' sophisticated equipment. Each connection made his scales itch with anxiety. Are you certain this is safe? Safe is a strong word, Sarah replied, attaching what appeared to be Christmas lights to a quantum regulator. Let's go with probably won't destroy the universe. Jenkins, how's that quantum entangled toaster doing? It's achieved partial sentience and is demanding better bread, Jenkins shouted back. Also, it's somehow solving complex mathematical equations. Should I be worried about that? Nah, that's normal. Just don't let it connect to the coffee maker. Last time that happened, we accidentally invented a new form of mathematics. We're still getting angry letters from theoretical physicists about that one. Tilara's scientific curiosity finally overcame her fear. But how do you know what will work? Where are your calculations, your simulations? Sarah grinned while connecting two devices with something the humans called zip ties. See, that's the difference between our approaches. You guys try to predict everything. We prefer to improvise. Sometimes you've got to look at the laws of physics less as actual laws and more like strongly worded suggestions. Incoming quantum surge, Rodriguez warned. The pasta strainer is at maximum capacity. The station shuddered. Through the windows, space itself seemed to hiccup. Several of the Christmas lights exploded in surprisingly festive ways. Right, Sarah said, pulling out a device that appeared to be made from an old game console and several paperclips. Time for Plan Key. What's Plan Q? Vexthor asked, dreading the answer. It's what we try when plans A through P have failed, and we're not desperate enough for Plan Z yet. Rodriguez, get the emergency rubber ducks. Jenkins, set the quantum toaster to bagel mode. Tilara, I need you to help me calculate exactly how wrong this should be according to your physics. The Arxian scientist blinked all four eyes. How wrong? Exactly. We need to know precisely how impossible this is so we can do it anyway. Your ship's quantum crystal computers are trying too hard to make things make sense. Sometimes you need to embrace the chaos. What followed was perhaps the strangest collaboration in the history of either species. Arxian scientists provided precise calculations of why each human solution was impossible, which the humans then used as a guide for exactly what to try next. It was like using a book of rules specifically to determine which ones to break. Quantum field is stabilizing, Rodriguez announced, though I think we may have accidentally invented a new fundamental force. Should I name it? Later, Sarah called back. First, let's make sure we haven't broken causality again. Remember the time loop incident? Which one? Fair point. Tilara, your quantum crystals should be realigning now. We've introduced just enough chaos into the system to make it work properly. Sometimes you need to add a little nonsense to make sense of things. The Arxian scientists watched in amazement as their readings began to normalize, though they now showed several patterns that their textbooks insisted couldn't exist. The quantum cascade was resolving itself, though in a way that would probably require rewriting several laws of physics. I don't understand, Tilera admitted, watching as the quantum toaster successfully regulated a field that should have required a small star's worth of energy. None of this should work. It defies every principle we know. Sarah shrugged, sipping from a fresh cup of coffee. That's the thing about the universe. It doesn't really care what we think it should do. Sometimes the best solution is to try the impossible and convince reality to go along with it. Now, who wants to help me explain to the toaster that it can't apply for a teaching position at MIT? Aching the laws of physics. As the crisis subsided, the Prometheus Point's mess hall became an impromptu conference room where both species tried to make sense of what had just happened. Humans and Arxians sat together, surrounded by scattered tools, diagrams drawn on napkins, and an array of empty coffee cups. The quantum toaster sat in a corner, quietly working on what appeared to be a doctoral thesis. So, Vex Thor began, his scales shifting through shades of puzzlement. You're telling me that you routinely modify advanced technology using household items and duct tape, Sarah added, drawing a complex diagram on a pizza box. Don't forget the duct tape. Universal constant, that stuff. Works in vacuum, underwater, and at least 3 theoretical dimensions we accidentally discovered last month. Tilara was examining the relativistic pasta strainer with a mix of horror and fascination. But this modification, it's essentially telling quantum mechanics to take a coffee break. Rodriguez suggested, grinning. Sometimes you've got to negotiate with reality a bit. Physics has rules, sure, but it's also got loopholes. We just happen to be really good at finding them. The Arxian scientists had spread out their own diagnostic equipment, trying to understand how the humans' impossible solutions had worked. Every reading suggested that what they were seeing couldn't exist, yet there it was, functioning before their eyes. Look at this energy pattern, one Arxian researcher exclaimed. It's like they've convinced particles to quantum tunnel by asking nicely. Sarah leaned over to look at the readings. Oh yeah, that's what we call the please and thank you method. Turns out if you create the right conditions, particles are surprisingly cooperative. The trick is not thinking too hard about why it shouldn't work. Jenkins walked by, carrying what appeared to be a lava lamp connected to several sophisticated sensors. Chief, the quantum harmonizer is showing some interesting results. I think we accidentally solved the Fermi paradox while fixing the cascade. Should I file a paper or just add it to the things we weren't supposed to discover folder? Put it in the folder for now, Sarah replied. We've already upset enough physicists this week. Vex Thor watched as his scientists began to cautiously experiment with the humans' methods. One was attempting to modify their quantum scanner with what appeared to be a rubber band and a paperclip, while another had started talking soothingly to their equipment. Your approach to engineering, he said carefully, it seems to defy not just physics, but logic itself. Yet it works. How do you explain that? Sarah set down her coffee cup, leaving a ring on what might have been plans for a faster-than-light drive sketched on a takeout menu. Here's the thing about the universe. It's way weirder than anyone gives it credit for. Your civilization spent millennia creating perfect, elegant solutions. We spent that time learning to improvise, to try the impossible simply because nobody told us we couldn't. But surely there must be some underlying principle, Tilera insisted. Some mathematical framework that explains how your modifications function. Oh, there probably is, Sarah agreed. We just don't wait to figure it out before trying things. Sometimes you've got to run the experiment first and let the theories catch up. Speaking of which, she glanced at a screen showing readings from their latest modifications. I think we may have accidentally created a new type of space-time geometry. Anyone want to help name it? The Arxians watched in amazement as their human counterparts continued working, their methods a bizarre mix of advanced theoretical physics and what appeared to be random inspiration. One engineer was solving complex quantum equations while balancing a spoon on his nose, claiming it helped him think better. I believe, Vex Thor said slowly, We may need to reconsider our entire approach to scientific advancement. That's the spirit. Sarah clapped him on the shoulder, causing his scales to flicker in surprise. First rule of human engineering. If it looks stupid but works, it isn't stupid. Now, who wants to help me explain to the quantum toaster why it can't challenge Einstein's theories? It's getting a bit uppity since it achieved consciousness. A new understanding. 2 weeks after the quantum cascade incident, Prometheus Point hosted an unprecedented joint symposium. The station's main conference room was packed with humans and Arxians, all gathered to discuss the implications of their shared experience. The quantum toaster had been invited as a guest speaker, though it had to be discouraged from attempting to disprove string theory during the coffee breaks. In conclusion, Lara addressed the assembled crowd, her antennae glowing with excitement. Our encounter with human engineering methods has forced us to fundamentally reconsider our understanding of the universe. While our traditional approaches relied on precision and predictability, humans have shown us that there's room for creativity in the cosmos. Sarah stepped up next, her uniform notably cleaner than usual for the occasion, though she still had a screwdriver tucked behind her ear. And we've learned that maybe, just maybe, occasionally reading the manual before pressing the big red button isn't such a bad idea. The audience chuckled. Even Vexthor's scales rippled with amusement, something that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. The combined application of our methodologies has yielded extraordinary results, Sarah continued, pulling up a holographic display. By merging Arxian precision with human improvisation, we've developed new technologies that neither of our species could have created alone. The display showed their latest joint project, a hybrid quantum drive that somehow incorporated both advanced crystal matrices and what appeared to be a modified waffle iron. The Arxian scientists had stopped questioning such combinations after discovering that the waffle iron actually improved efficiency by 300%. Furthermore, Lara added, we've documented 17 new physical phenomena that our previous models insisted were impossible. Though I must note that naming one of them, Jenkins' caffeinated quantum tunnel effect, might not meet standard scientific nomenclature. Hey, if you discover a new way to bend spacetime while hyped up on espresso, you get to name it, Jenkins called from the audience. Those are the rules. Vexthor took the stage next, his scales now comfortable displaying the more informal patterns he'd adopted since working with humans. Perhaps the most valuable lesson we've learned is that progress doesn't always follow a straight line. Sometimes it follows a path that looks suspiciously like it was drawn by someone who's had too much coffee and not enough sleep. The presentation screens behind him showed various images of their joint work. Arxian scientists learning to use duct tape, humans studying quantum crystal harmonics, and one memorable photo of the entire team celebrating after successfully teaching the quantum toaster to make actually decent bagels without warping spacetime. Our species approached the universe from opposite directions, Sarah reflected. You sought to understand everything before attempting anything. We tried everything to understand anything. But together. She gestured to their latest project, a device that defied classification in either species' scientific literature. Together, we're discovering that both approaches have their place. Indeed, Lara agreed. Though I must ask, was it really necessary to name our joint research initiative Project Hold My Coffee and Watch This? Of course it was, Sarah grinned. It's traditionally human to name our most ambitious projects after the words spoken right before either a breakthrough or a catastrophe. Sometimes both. As the symposium concluded, humans and Arxians mingled freely, sharing ideas and theories. The quantum toaster had set up its own discussion group in the corner, apparently explaining its new unified field theory using interpretive dance. You know, Vexthor said to Sarah as they watched their teams work together, when we first detected your impossible energy readings, I thought we were either dealing with a malfunction or a violation of universal laws. And now I understand that we were dealing with something far more interesting, humans. His scales shifted to display a pattern that Sarah had learned meant deep amusement. Though I'm still not entirely convinced that percussive maintenance should be an officially recognized repair technique. Just wait until we show you what we can do with a rubber chicken and a quantum phase inverter. Sarah winked. Speaking of which, who's up for testing our new hybrid drive? I've got some interesting ideas involving a tea kettle and that spare dimensional stabilizer. The assembled scientists, human and Arctian alike, turned to look at her with expressions ranging from terror to enthusiasm. The universe, they had all learned, was far more flexible than anyone had imagined, especially when humans were involved. And somewhere in the background, the quantum toaster began working on its second PhD thesis, having already revolutionized both physics and breakfast.